Hey everybody, how you guys doing today? Welcome back to part 2 of our How to Vlog series. In today's episode, we're going to chat about the best video editing software, which laptop to use, and how I edit my videos, because you guys just blew me away with all the support in the last episode, and pretty much all of you said, how do you edit your vlog? So that's what we're going to be discussing today. Now in the last episode we did chat about which is the best camera gear. Today we're going to focus on which is the best laptop, because next to your camera, I believe that your laptop is the most important weapon, because vlogs is a little bit like an iceberg. The top bit is the filming, and then you've got this monster under the ocean which nobody sees, but that's where most of the time happens. Having the perfect laptop is vital because it opens up so many more possibilities, including color grading as well as special edits. There's so much more you can do if you have a laptop that is powerful enough. So in terms of what laptop I've been using, a few months ago I left Mac and moved to Windows. In last week's episode I did chat about that, so definitely check that out on the reasons why. What I'm currently using is the latest Gigabyte Aero 15. So this one is, at the moment, I think the best laptop in 2017 for video editing, especially if you do a lot of travel like we do, where we're home maybe a couple of months of the year. So I need something that is powerful, light, and also can do everything I need wherever I need, because sometimes I'll be editing on a train, sometimes I'll be on a flight. So the reason that I currently love the Gigabyte Aero 15 is because it is so light and thin. This one is very comparable to weight in terms of the MacBook Pro 15-inch. It's only a couple of grams more heavier, but it packs so much more. So first off, I've got all my ports that I need. I've got 3 USB 3.0s, one on this side, 2 on this side. It also has a Thunderbolt built in. I've got an Ethernet as well as an SD card reader, which being in travel vlogging, this is so handy to have. Now this is a 15-inch laptop. I recently moved from 13 to 15-inch because I find just after editing on a 13-inch for several years, just having a 15-inch laptop just blows my mind. I don't know why I didn't use one before. Also, because this is nice and thin, the screen I'm absolutely in love with. As you can see, the bezel is extremely thin. It's almost like a 14-inch laptop with a 15-inch screen, because as you can see, a lot of other laptops tend to have like this massive junk on the top here. This one is right towards the end, which I absolutely love, because when you're traveling, you need to save as much space and weight as possible. So in terms of like the features inside of the laptop, it has a GTX 1060, which is one of the top-end laptop graphics cards on the market at the moment. It does come with 16 gigabytes RAM, but you can easily upgrade to 32 gigabytes, which is vital for video editing because it just makes your process that much more smoother. It has a 512 gigabyte hard drive, but you can pack 2 hard drives in there if you need to expand it. I mostly keep my laptop quite empty, so I usually just use the latest project file or a couple of projects on there, and then I move everything onto hard drives. So if you do need more space, you can use it, but I've been quite happy with just the standard 512 gigabytes in here. It also has an i7 Kaby Lake processor in here as well, which is the latest processor on the market at the moment. So you know, if you are picking up this laptop like I did a few months ago, you're going to have the latest tech, and also it's going to future-proof yourself. So you have all the latest features in here to keep you going for the next few years, which is the main reason I left Apple to come switch to Windows, because I just felt the guts that they were putting into their new laptops. First of all, they weren't powerful enough, and then I felt like I'm buying this laptop, it's not even the latest tech, and I'm not future-proofing myself. So at least when picking up this, I'm going to be able to edit 4K GoPro footage and all my Sony footage, at least for the next coming years. So it does feel good to have a laptop that is future-proof. And the final bit that I enjoy about this laptop is the color accurate display, which means it is made for us creatives. It is perfect for video editing, especially if you're going to do color grading. Also, if you're a photographer and edit a lot in cat just came past. Also, if you're a photographer and edit a lot in Lightroom and Photoshop, this display is aimed at you as well. Awesome, so let's get to the fun stuff, video editing. Now, there are so many softwares out there that you can use. However, I really feel like it just depends on what you either grew up with or someone recommended. So the main ones are Adobe Premiere Pro and Final Cut Pro. So in school, I was taught Adobe Premiere Pro, so I just stuck with that because I didn't end up getting a Mac till years later. However, I'm so thankful that I did use Adobe Premiere Pro because it works on both Windows and Mac. So you can, like in my situation, leave Mac and come to Windows to continue editing. However, Final Cut Pro is specific for Mac laptops. So if you were interested in using Adobe Premiere Pro and following along with this edit, I hope there is a vlog that you guys have ready and you can just watch it alongside with me. You can go to Adobe Creative Cloud and they have multiple plans to choose from. Now, if you're a student or a teacher, they do have the student option, which saves you so much money. So if you're university, high school, jump on that because I think you save like 60% on your subscription. So you can do multiple ones. We personally have the entire suite. So this is some of the software that we use. We have Photoshop, Lightroom, Premiere Pro, Audition, Media Encoder, and sometimes I dabble in After Effects. So we decided to go for the full entire suite. Now on top of these, you get access to so many more. So if you wanted to design like magazines or do animation, you have access to all that as well. But there is a cheaper option if you just needed like Photoshop, Lightroom or Premiere Pro. Alrighty, so let's jump in. I always recommend to back up your footage. So I always import it straight onto a hard drive. And then because a lot of times I'm editing in not ideal situations, at least at the moment I have a desk, but usually it can be just on a chair, on a train, in an airport, and I generally don't like to keep my hard drives plugged in, so what I do is I will then drag it onto the desktop. So I have my vlog here, and I call it just something to do with the day, one of the major events that happened that day, and this is actually us leaving Tokyo to go on the bullet train to Kanazawa. So if you just open up here, I've got all my footage just here in order, and what I'm going to do is go and open up Adobe Premiere Pro. So I've got my Creative Cloud here. I'm just going to open up that. Once I've opened up Adobe Premiere Pro, I'm just going to open up a new project. So I'm going to go File, New Project. And so I like to keep everything within the project. So I'm going to come in here, and it's nothing really professional, but I like to open up my folder and just call it Stuff, because I like to keep my Premiere Pro folders separate to the footage. So I'm just going to go open in here, select folder, and then I'm just going to name the project something that, you know, I could think the vlog could be called at the end of the day, or just the major event. So I've got it named here, and I'm just going to press OK. So this is your main Adobe Premiere Pro area that you're going to look at. I know it looks scary. Whenever I show anyone Premiere Pro for the first time, they're like, there's so much going on. But once you get used to it, it just looks like a piece of cake. First thing I'm going to go do is import our footage. So I'm just going to go File, Import. Just go out of the Stuff folder, and there is all my footage here. So I'm just going to hold down Shift and then click towards the end and open it up. So it's going to quickly just import all the footage for us. Awesome, so our footage is just imported. Now I just want to quickly show you to give you an idea of how much footage we generally shoot on a day. I think this should be about 5 to 6 gigabytes. And as you can see, there is quite a lot of footage that we have here. So with Premiere Pro, there's a lot of different windows, and that's where you have your workflow. So as you can see here, it's going to be where all our footage is. Down here, I like to organize it with effects, which we'll come to a bit later. And then here we have your sequence. So your sequence is where you're going to do pretty much all your work. This is where you cut up, prepare, add music, effects, color grading. Everything happens in this part. Now with Premiere Pro, as you can see, you can adjust as you feel. So first thing you need to do is go File, New, Sequence. And then the one that I tend to use is the DSLR 1080p at 25 frames per second. Now the reason I picked that one is, as you guys know from our blogs, we use a lot of slow motion. So I shoot in 50 frames per second. So I tend to use 25 frames per second rather than the 24 frames, which is the standard to get that filmic look, because we do a lot of slow motion. And of course, if you're halving 50 frames to 25 frames, it's going to look much nicer than halving it down to 24 frames. You're going to have a few skipping frames here. So when you are going in here, you're just going to name your sequence. I'll call this just main vlog. You can call it whatever you want. You can even use the same sequence number. Press OK. Now, as you can see, this window changed at the bottom, and we also got a bit of a black bar here. This is where I feel like my editing is a little bit different to everyone, because when I go and film, it has gone to a point where we have been vlogging for a couple of years now, so we pretty much shoot what we think is going to be in the vlog. Back in the day, really early on, we would overfilm and we'd have so much footage, and it got to a point where I'd be spending way too long in the vlog. It does come with a bit of practice where you do get used to how much footage to film, but because we have got that down packed now, I have all of my footage that I really need for the vlog. Now, as you can see here with the names, I've just realized I've gone over the camera's 10,000 naming structure, so it does switch back to 0. So what I'm going to do is scroll down here. Honestly, you're probably never going to have this issue, but scroll down here to this footage here, because I realize that this is where the vlog does start. I'm just going to scroll down and hold Shift and just drag the entire footage into the timeline. So I'm just going to hold that, drag it down here, and as you can see, all my video files are going to appear in one long line. Now, as you can see, I've just got this error saying this clip does not match the sequence settings. Now, that's because this footage is shot at 50 frames per second, so it allows me to do slow motion. A lot of people will shoot at 25 frames, and then when they want slow motion scenes, switch it to 50 frames. But I find with travel vlogging, you just don't have a moment to be playing around with all your different settings, so I just film everything at 50 frames, and I think it does turn out quite nicely. Now, if I was to say change sequence settings, it's going to change the sequence to match the clip, which is 1080p at 50 frames. So I don't want that, otherwise I'm going to get that 50 frames per second look, which I personally don't like. You do see it a lot with video games or like gaming channels, but I like that 25 frames per look. It is much more natural. It's what you're used to seeing on TV and movies. So what I'm going to go here is click Keep Existing Settings. So it's going to keep it at 1080p 25, but my footage is still going to be fine. So with Premiere Pro, with practice, is you start using shortcuts. As you can see, I just used a zoom in and out here. I didn't use my mouse for that. I used plus and minus. So you can use plus and minus to go in closer and out. So I will go through all the different shortcuts that I'm using, but as you can see, this is our entire day. So generally, a normal day of footage, which I would call that this, we're going to get about half an hour to 45 minutes worth of footage. Of course, this is a standard vlog, I'd call it, because there's no drone footage, there is no GoPro footage, which is probably I'll save for another episode. This is pretty much it. This is the entire sequence, and if I hold this little, I don't even know what this is called, the blue line, I can scroll through and scrub through the footage. So I can go through here and see how the day goes. And that is pretty much our entire day right there. Now with Premiere Pro, if you have this option where you don't have an as powerful laptop, you can switch it from full to half. So it's actually going to preview your footage at half the quality, which does save a lot of your computer processing power, or you can even drop it down to quarter. It's not going to change your end footage, it's just how it previews to you when you are editing. So now that we have our sequence, what we're going to do is just slowly chop through the day. So what happens is I'm just going to use the plus button to zoom in, so it's going to give me more access. In terms of editing our vlogs, I tend to be a visual audio editor. So what happens is, because I try to keep our vlogs down to about 10 to 15 minutes max, sometimes I do go overboard, and one of the main things I can do to cut down on time is removing breaths and pauses. This is quite easy to do when you're being a visual editor, and I'll show you what I mean. If you look down here, this top row is the video file. And if I come here and just drag this up, you will get a bit of a preview of what is being played. However, I tend to not use that. I look at this all the time, so that's why I keep this down. But I just wanted to show you that just as an example. This down here is audio. So if I drag this open, it's gonna just make it a bit bigger for you. And as you can see the left and right audio channels. Thinking in my mind when I'm about to edit is, I can see that's quite low, this audio. And then I see a spike here. That generally means either I'm talking or there's a lot of background noise. So what I'll do is I just simply move it to here. And then as you can see, I'll start talking. So I'll just show you that as an example. Good morning, everybody. So that's when this talking begun. So to save on time, I mean, that's already 2 seconds, which is a waste of the audience time because there's so much out there, Netflix, movies. You want to ensure that it's a nice, tight, clean package. After some time, you start to remember them, but these are your main tools just here. If you just hover your mouse over them, you will find the tools. I tend to use the C tool or the cut tool because that way you can cut the footage out. So if I just click this, or if I click C, this little razor blade will come out. I'm just going to press plus to zoom in, and I'm going to move this here. And I'm going to leave a little bit before the talking starts so it's not so jarring. So I'm just going to click here. And as you can see, this footage is highlighted. Just say it selected the wrong footage for you and you want to actually delete this, which of course you wouldn't, but just say you wanted to. Rather than going back up here to the mouse selection tool, as you can see, it's giving me the shortcut V. So I'm going to press V, and I can just select between the two. And then that way I can just select here, and I can press delete. Now as you can see, I've got this blank space here. The video would start with some blank before it starts. We don't want that. We want it to start straight away with the good morning everybody. So you can either right click in here and click ripple delete, or you can just click in here and press the delete button, and that will just move the entire sequence across. So as you can see, the footage has gone backwards, and then the vlog is going to begin with the good morning everybody, welcome to day 3 of our Gecko's adventure trip. Yep, so there we go. As I'm a visual editor, I can look through here and see for these peaks and these valleys. So I'm gonna have a listen here. So as you can see, there was quite a long pause there. I can probably save time on the vlog, and I'm going to press plus to zoom in. As you can see, I just brought up my S's a bit, so I'm probably going to want to start at the end of the S so that you get the full word. So I'm just going to press C again to get my cut tool out. Click here, and as you can see, there's a valley here, and vlogging is going to resume here. Cool. So I'm going to come here, move this along and press this, and then I'm going to press V again to go back to the selection tool, tap it, and then press delete. As you can see, there is a blank space, so you can just go in here and press delete. So that just saved a couple of seconds, and also pauses. I don't know personally, I don't like them in the vlogs. I like to remove them as much as possible. So if you look visually at this, you can see that there are some pauses. So Jess had one, delete that. Generally, I will do this first. So I'll go through and remove all the pauses in a vlog. So that's a quick example of how I'd edit like a vlogging or a talking scene. So the next type of scene I'd call would be like a music montage scene. So I'm just going to scrub ahead here to a music montage. So as you can see, I can see that there's a lot of scenes going on here where the audio is not peaking up and down. So just visually I can look straight at my sequence and jump straight into it. However, when I'm personally editing, I will just go through the entire sequence and then just come up to it to edit it, but just for the video editing tutorial. So what I'm going to do is then go and find some music, which I know is a question that a lot of you ask on where we get music from. So if you're initially starting out, YouTube audio library is fantastic. There's a wide range of music there, but a lot of times I've now moved on to SoundCloud, and I've contacted individual artists and said, hey, if I can use your music, put a link to your channel below in the description. These are my stats. This is what I plan to do with it. Can I use your music? A lot of them will say yes. Sometimes some artists will be like, hey, just buy my music on Bandcamp. Throw a couple of bucks their way to support them, and then you can get a high-res version downloaded. So someone that I use quite often, you will hear a lot of him because it is, I don't know, he's quite a high quality person that produces consistently, is DJ Quads. You will find that he is used a lot through vlogs, and sometimes people will be like, hey, I hear this across, like for example, Casey's vlogs and some other people's vlogs, because it is extremely hard to find high quality music that not everybody is using. I can sometimes spend hours on SoundCloud trying to find an artist that has good beats, has a lot of beats, so I can use them across multiple videos, and then is also willing to let you use them. So that's why sometimes you will find music that a lot of people, it's very similar, because when you've been on YouTube for a while, you generally want to move past YouTube audio library. Not everything can be found on there, and when you've produced over 700 videos, you've pretty much gone through that entire library. But if you are just starting out, check it out. But DJ Quads is someone, just send him a message on SoundCloud if you wanted to use his music. And as you can see, I have quite a lot of his music here, and I'll just go through and just listen to. I'm just going to put this one in there. I've used this in the vlogs before, but I'm going to put it in here today. So what I'm just going to go do is go File, Import. But another easier way, which I'll show you for the music, is just simply open up your File Explorer down here, go to your music. So I had just put it on the desktop just to show you guys today. And you can just drag it into your project. I'll just explain one thing here. See if you got V, V2, and V3, then A, A2. V for video, video 1, 2, 3, A for audio 1, 2, 3. Now this is where Premiere Pro gets interesting, because you can start stacking music and video. So what I can do is put this down here, and it's going to play the background of the train and the music at the same time. So if I drag this in here, now as you can see, that stuck. Like, can you see it like popped in there? That's because I've got this magnet tool on here. So I'm just going to zoom in and show you this. So you can hear the music going and the train. Recently in my vlogs, I will just generally cut the entire music and then turn it to slow motion. I've really been enjoying that style, and a lot of you have been enjoying that style as well. So what I'll do is I will select this. Now if we come over here, you've got a little lock tool, and I'm just going to click toggle lock. That means nothing is going to happen to the video. As you can see, the video is not selected anymore, but the audio is selected. So I can just hit delete on that and the audio is gone. Now, some people like to bring the audio down, keep a little bit of background in that, but I just found the train scene in here, it's very distracting because there's a lot of noise going on. It's just not enjoyable, hence why I drop it. Maybe somewhere else where we're at a temple and peace and serenity and you want to hear the water dripping, I'll keep that there, but not in the scene. So I'm just going to zoom in here and I'm just going to play this back for you. As you can see, that is gone. No audio from the train. Now, you're probably wondering, how do you do slow motion? So this is a very quick shortcut. You just right click on here and you go to this tool called speed duration. You can do things like reverse it if you want the train to go backwards, or if you just want to do a straight slow motion. Because we shot it at 50 frames per second, for me to get it nice and smooth, I can probably drop it to about 25 frames per second. So if you do the maths, that's 50% of 50 frames. So I'm just going to change that to 50 frames, and I'm just going to press OK on that. Now this has actually been extended, because if I have a 1 minute clip and I decide to halve the speed, it's going to double, so it's going to go to 2 minutes. So as you can see, I've actually lost some of that footage. So if you just zoom out, drag and highlight all of this, and as you can see, I've skipped a scene, so I can just hold shift and click that, zoom back out using the minus and drag this along. If you have a look here, this is another way you can edit. If you just highlight over the end of this, you're going to get a backwards and a forward looking arrow. So if I face it backwards and hold and drag, I can actually shorten my clip as well. So that's another alternative instead of using the C or the cut tool. But I want to drag this out because I have a lot more time. So as you can see down here, 4 minutes 20 was the original clip, and then it goes out to 9 minutes 15. And I have a full slow motion scene, so I can hit play on here. And you've got the slow motion on there. As you can see, sometimes the camera is focusing in and out, so I'm probably going to start it from here. C, V, delete, delete. We got that there, and then I'm going to delete that there because I don't want it to drag on too long. As you can see, I've got this big black bar here, and when I'm editing my music montages, I generally try to keep the vlogging away from it, so I have a bit of some space here to edit. So I'm just going to drag this one in. I'm going to do what we did before. I'm going to press the lock. I'm going to delete the audio. I'm going to unlock it so I can access the video. Right click, speed duration, change it back to 50%, and then it's going to increase it nicely rather than squishing in with the other one. As you can see, I have that bit of a focus there, so I'm adjusting the camera because doing some sneaky filming. So I'm just going to delete that front bit. Cool, that's nice. And then I'm going to end it there. Now, as you can see here, it's not as smooth as I would like it to be. So I don't use any sort of image stabilizer. I just hold everything on the camera because it is all built in. I don't have like an additional piece of hardware to do that. So what you can do is Premiere can smooth out your footage for you. What I'm going to do is show you a quick effect. So I'm going to come to this window here called effects, and this is where you're going to find things like color grading, which is lumetri. That's kind of like, I don't know, filters would be the easiest way to do it. You've got audio transitions. You can even make new folders by clicking this custom bin and naming it like as I've done before. I named it favorites. So I'm just gonna, I don't need that bin. So I'm just gonna open up favorites, and these are some of the effects I use all the time. One of them is called warp stabilizer. Now what happens if you want to use an effect, you just hold this, drag it onto here. Usually it would work. Now the reason it isn't working is because I did slow motion on there. So warp stabilizer and speed can't be used at the same time. But you're like, I wanted slow motion and I want it to be smooth, so this is what you do. You're gonna do Control Z to undo the effect. And then you're going to right click and use this handy little tool called Nest. I generally leave it as nested sequence 1, but you can do man sleeping on train. I don't touch these ever, so you don't need to worry about that. And as you can see, it's turned green to highlight that this has been nested. Now, if we go back in here, I can drag the warp stabilizer on there and it's going to work perfectly. So that's a way to get around using speed and warp stabilizer. It's probably the only time that I use the nested sequence. And then it's just going to analyze it in the background and it's going to do this slow motion. If you wanted to check how the process was going, you can click Effects Control and it does give you a little timer. But as you can see, because of my laptop, it did it quite quickly. If we play this back, it's a bit smoother. Now you can go in, as you can see, it's nice and smooth in there. You can go into the effects control window. So this is where we were before, just on the effects, but this is where you can control the effects. And like I said, Premiere uses Windows, so you can just drag this up if you wanted to have a look at it a bit more. And you can just go down to the warp stabilizer effect and you can change the smoothness just here. Sometimes you can overdo it and it just doesn't look that good. I sometimes drop it to about 10% to try to keep that natural look as much as possible. So to look like it is still handheld film, but it's a little bit smoother. And then it goes into that. To be honest, I probably could use warp stabilizer on that, but I'm happy with that. Now I generally don't like to have too loud of a music on, so I will want to cut that. So I'm just going to cut the scene. I actually like that with the walking out, so I'm going to make a cut there and then have that before there. As you can see, there's a bit of a, it hits you with the sound because it comes straight in. So what we're going to do is use an effect to bring that in slowly. So what you're going to use is exponential fade, which you can find in the audio transitions, or you can just search for it. You're just going to drag exponential fade. Now this is an audio transition, so it's only going to go onto the audio, and you just drag it on there. Depending on the situation, you can adjust this by dragging it, by how much of a fade you want. I also like to do a fade in on the music as well, so I'm going to be talking from here, so I probably want the audio on the way out by the time I start talking. So I'm going to make a cut just before, and then I'm going to go here and just delete all that, and I'm going to drag the exponential fade on here. And it would be nice for that to slowly do it as we are leaving the station. I might even drag this out a bit more and shorten this so that it sounds a bit better. It is hard to explain. After editing a lot of videos, you'll get used to the sounds and what feels good, and everyone's style is different. So you might like it to come in very quickly, and that's the cool thing about vlogs, is you can make it your own. And that is the scene edited. Now, I'm just going to show you how to export footage. I'm going to jump into an already edited vlog. So I'm just going to quickly jump into an already edited vlog so I can show you how to export your footage once you've gone through, edited the vlog, done your music montages. So this is the previous day. And as you can see, I've gone through and edited the entire thing. I've got my music montages. Cool, and then I also have my end card, which we can discuss about making in a future episode. And as you can see, I kept it down to about 11 minutes from generally, I think it was about 30 to 35 minutes worth of footage. So when you are exporting, you need to highlight everything that you want exported. Because I want to export the entire project, I'm going to go to the beginning and press I, and I'm going to go to the end, zoom in, press O, and drag. So now that we've selected everything that we want exported, I'm going to go here, File, Export, Media. So you're going to pop up with the export settings. H.264 I recommend because it is a great file size to keep everything down, so it's not this gigantic file. And then you can honestly just click in here, go to YouTube, and press 1080p HD, because it's just going to do all the settings for you, especially if your output is YouTube. As you can see, the sequence is 1920 by 1080 at 25 frames per second, because that's the sequence we chose when we started the project. Now if you come down here, you can get some extra settings, but to be honest, most of the time you don't need to touch any of these. However, sometimes I'll do render at maximum depth, and if I have time, I'll do VBR 2-pass. So what that means is it's going to export the video twice and then put it into one package just to make sure there's no inconsistencies. To be honest, a lot of time I just do VBR 1-pass because I am in a rush. I don't really see a lot between the two, but sometimes people like to click it. And then I click use maximum render quality. What I like to do is then select the output name so I can organize where I want to export it. And because I edited it on the desktop, I'm going to export it to the desktop. So I'm just going to right click, go new folder, and then call it, I don't know, Tokyo Vlog. And then I'm going to click in here, and then I'm just going to just name the Tokyo Vlog. If I've thought of a name for the vlog, but I haven't, I will just call it the name of the vlog. But because we're not sure just yet, I'm just going to click save on that. So I have all my settings here. and then I'm going to click Q. A lot of editors sometimes will just hit the export button and it'll just start exporting straight here on the screen for you. But because I'm always multitasking, I would like to use the Q button, which I'll show you now. But just notice something, it's going to give you an estimated file size here, 1296 megabytes or 1.3 gigabytes. So you can get an idea of how big your upload is. So if you're on slow internet, you know it's going to take a while. So I'm just going to click the Q button here, and it's going to open up another software called Adobe Media Encoder. So this is Adobe Media Encoder. So if you're doing a lot of edits, so just say you have, for example, last night I was editing about 5 different Facebook videos and I wanted to go to bed. I can just queue up all these different videos and just hit export and they'll just get done when they want to, or rather than just being able to edit one. So what it's doing is just compiling everything in Adobe and sending it over to Adobe Media Encoder, and in a second it's going to pop up here. So as you can see, it has appeared, it's got all my settings. You can jump in and if you wanted to change anything, maybe accidentally click the wrong setting, but we should be fine. The output folder, it's going to my Tokyo vlog, and what I just simply do is just hit the start button and it's just going to start preparing everything and putting it all together. So because this is a newer laptop, rendering time is very quick. So as you can see, it just keeps going down, but it should take about, I don't know, maybe 7 minutes. So that's why I honestly probably could have time to do the VBR2 pass, because 14 minutes isn't a whole lot of time to wait. However, back in the day on my older laptop, it would take about 40 to 50 minutes to export. So it is so much nicer. It frees me up to have a bit of a relax before the next day, or maybe work on something else. But I hope you enjoyed this look at how I edit in Adobe Premiere Pro. There is still so much more I can show you, but I thought I'd just really focus on a basic edit so you know how to wrap your hand around Adobe Premiere Pro. If you guys were interested in me continuing this series on how I do different edits, also where I find my music, maybe a little bit of color grading, just let me know below and I can do a part 3. But thank you so much for watching, I really do appreciate it, and Tokyo Vlogs will resume next week. Thanks guys.
A little boxes on the hillside, a little boxes made ticky-tacky, little